Yeah, thanks for the talk, Mo. I definitely think you were right in that status symbols are relative to the society, and they sort of shift as the culture shifts. And I think in certain societies, like Silicon Valley, we see this new form of status symboling, like virtue signaling. So practically telling someone that you wouldn't wear a jewelry can just be as of a status symbol, ego gratification in certain societies, as wearing that piece of jewelry is in others. So I'm not accusing you of doing this. I love your talks and I love your content. But I was just wondering, is there a lot of ego gratification behind what you're doing here? Because you're talking to millions of people, and I was just wondering what you feel when you give those talks.
It's a wonderful question. Thank you so much for this question. So the reality is you will never be egoless, okay? Again, just like the truth. So we will never be without ego, because if you wear an Armani suit, it's an ego that is attempting to say, hey, I've made it, I'm successful, I'm stylish. If you wear shorts and t-shirts, it's another ego that says, I don't care about those things, right? The game here, as I always say, is that you own your ego and it doesn't own you, right? So you know the difference when you start to find yourself aching if they don't believe your ego. Right? If I wear a t-shirt and people say, and I start to feel that people are telling me, no, you're not really that simple and straightforward, you're just pretending to be, and it hurts me, then I'm actually, then this actually is an ego that I'm trying to prove, right? Now, I rarely say this publicly, but I promise you, if you really want to fulfill me, I would love to reach 1 billion happy and be forgotten. I would absolutely, and by the way, part of the design of 1 billion happy of 2 people telling 2 people telling 2 people is truly me saying, this is not about me at all.
Yes.
And it's not about any other leader. It's about every one of us becoming a leader.
Yep.
Right? And that is so critical to the success of this. Right? I have been working on my ego, I promise you, actively, for the last 7 years. Today I spent most of the day with friends, and I can tell you there are 3 that I'm still aware of that I'm trying to kill.
Yep.
1 billion happy is not one of them. This is totally not about me, okay? This is, believe it or not, even not about Ali. This is about us.
Yes.
This is, for the first time ever, I am not that driven executive that wants to achieve and just have a TED talk, right? As a matter of fact, I swear, if you really want to reward me, when we get there, erase my name. Because to me, this is not about this level anymore. I'm not playing for this level anymore. I'm playing because I tend to believe that the way this world should operate and will operate will be totally different if we get to that target. And that's what it's all about.
Amen, Mo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, for everyone who's here and everyone who will see this video, if I ever show any sign of that, thrash me, wake me up and remind me, okay? Because it's hard, huh? It's hard when I get so many wonderful messages, when I get hugs and I get so much love. It's hard not to sometimes tell yourself, whoa,
yeah,
well done, Mo, right? If you ever see one of those signals, thrash me in public. Right? Wake me up, because that would be the worst thing ever. Remember, it's all about the why, then the what, then the how. If my why goes wrong, this is never going to happen.
I think the way you just illustrated achieving a goal of helping civilization out past this level, past your life, and then erasing the name afterward.
I wish that to be true.
I think if people embodied that, that would be very helpful for where we go. Yeah. Good question. Good answer.
Great question. Thank you.
So, Mo, you mentioned the idea of intensity being, it almost felt like negative in your view in the workplace. And I kind of wanted to ask, what's the use of that intensity? Because obviously you have to be an intense human being to get to this point. You have to be committed to what you're doing to get to this point. And how does intensity not show itself
you choose
during
what to do.
that journey?
You choose what it is that you have to do. We're intense because we plug into our life way more than we should be doing, right? So most successful business people need 1 or 2 deals a year. Most salespeople work on 60 or 50 or 40 or 30 or whatever that number is. Most of us are intense because we're spreading ourselves over the wrong targets, over the wrong objectives, right? Now, once again, there is an enormous value to commitment, right? But there is a tremendous value to chill. I don't know how to stress that enough. The game is to do your absolute best in whichever task you assign yourself as an important task. You be very selective about what you assign as important, right? And then you do your absolute best. Spiritual teachings from the East will call that detachment. Detachment is to do the absolute best that you can and understand that the result is a little bigger than you. That you could spend 1.5 years working on a deal and then the CEO changes, right? It happens, it's outside you. Or, what I call it, in Solve for Happy, I call it committed acceptance. And committed acceptance is to understand that the results achieved in your life are a little bigger than you are. Go ahead, you wanted to say something else.
I just feel like, for me, a lot of times I hit points when I look at software that my coworker and my boss has written in, and I'm like, that could be better. Objectively, I can sit down for a half an hour and point out to you why that could be better. And I need to be intense in getting that point across because they won't understand it if I'm pretty casual and I'm very comfortable about getting that point across because it feels like a comfortable thing for me. I'm okay if it doesn't get done. I'm okay if it does get done. Where is that intensity useful?
Do you ever ask yourself if it needs to be better?
I'm storing a social security number for a person who cannot defend themselves against an attack from someone who is well more resourced.
So that's not better. That's not better. So
I'm not talking about necessarily better. I'm talking about this needs to be different because there is a person
different is a very different word. So if it's not right, you need to set it right, okay? But you wouldn't need intensity for that at all. If you just simply say, hey guys, this is not gonna work. It's not as intended, right? The reason when we want intensity is when we disagree, right? Is when you think of it as this is not good enough and they think of it as this is better than good, right? That disagreement is because we haven't aligned on what matters. But in reality, I will tell you hands down, if you have an accurate view of something that actually is not going to work, no one's going to object to that. I mean, I learned that heavily at Google. So at Google,
smart people. I'm sorry. I really am.
No.
Sorry
Well, go ahead.
I really am because I know you're you're definitely smarter than me. You
No, not
work
at all.
around intelligent people who are willing to say, "I'm wrong. I'll accept that you are right about this, and I'll back down." I'm working with people who are normal, who are gonna say, "No, you are wrong. I'm not gonna back down."
Where's data in all of this?
I'm sorry?
Where is data in all of this?
Where is the data? Lost on them.
So,
I mean, I understand, and again, this is another environment where I am in a perfect environment where people understand that this data is sensitive and it needs to be protected, and I don't need to be intense about this. But okay. I'm trying to understand, where do you say, I am going to put my foot down. I am right here. It's not about being happier or not happier. I know that this is the right thing, and people are going to be unhappy about it.
Okay,
Where is that right?
I will tell you hands down in front of everyone here, everything I told you today, I don't know if it's right or not. Okay? As a matter of fact, I work from the assumption that I'm never right. Believe it or not. Okay? I work from the assumption that I know nothing at all. hear me out.
I do too, and
Yeah,
that's
hear
what
me out.
sucks.
So the idea here is, all I know is I have a slightly different perspective, right? With a complete humbleness that my slightly different perspective on any topic whatsoever might actually be right and might be wrong, right? If you have that humbleness in mind, you will make your point of view, and then you will say, does that make sense? Right? You're not going to prove anyone right or wrong, because no one is right or wrong, by the way. That's the whole point. Everything is within context. Now, if you manage to get to the point where we say, before you say you're right and I'm wrong, if you get to the point, and I learned that so well at Google, if you get to the point where you say, what are we trying to optimize for here? What does success look like? Right? If you achieve that first, yeah, but that's the problem. If we don't agree on that, then no one is ever right and no one is ever wrong, because within context, they're solving a different problem, right? So the number one I did, and by the way, what I loved most about Google, most when I joined that company, was that I was the vice president. I sat in those meeting rooms, and the youngest people in the audience or in the meeting said, Mo, you're an idiot. I mean, they didn't really have to be that... right? Yeah, no, they said it that way. Like, what you just said is a pile of crap. And I was like, ooh, why? Can you please tell me why? Right? And then 2 minutes later, someone else stood up and said, hey, what you just said is a pile of crap, right? And the whole concept was, what are we trying to measure, right? If we're trying to measure something and we agree that this is what we're trying to measure, finally we're approaching the truth, right? If you're not approaching the truth, then basically everyone is wrong, or maybe everyone is right, and it doesn't need intensity at all. Because if you work from that assumption that within my context I'm right, within their context they're right too, okay? Then suddenly the conversation becomes a conversation of, but I really want the best out here. I'm just trying to tell you guys there is something you're missing out on, and if you don't take it into consideration, that's fine. I'm going to try again to get more data. If it doesn't work, I'm going to try again and get more data. If it doesn't work, maybe I'm wrong. That's fine. And I have that very weird habit in my life. I give everything three strikes. I never try the fourth time, ever. So everything in my life, relationships, everything, everyone gets 3 chances. No one ever gets 4, ever. So if I give you something 3 times and you say no, okay. Yeah.
Some people don't even give you a second chance.
3 is fair.
Yeah, just saying, some people don't. I think what you said about both perspectives being interesting, to say, could they be true in their own perspective, and then keep working on getting to some sort of...
So illusion. So one of the biggest reasons for unhappiness in our modern world is what I call the 6 grand illusions. Right? That we treat the modern world with a view of things concepts we believe are true, but they are actually illusions. One of the biggest illusions is what I call the illusion of knowledge, is that we actually think we know, right? Even though we constantly get proven to not know enough, that there is more to know, or that what we knew was not very accurate. The earth is flat, no, the earth is round, no, it's not a sphere, it's actually egg-shaped, it's rotating around the sun. I don't know if you know this, huh? So many of us will actually look at and say, I am absolutely certain that the Earth is going through an elliptical orbit around the sun. No, it isn't. As a matter of fact, if you really want to know the truth, the sun is moving in an orbit. The Earth is going around it. So the reality is that the Earth is actually going this way. It never touches the same point twice, or not for ages, right? And because the universe itself is moving and the galaxy is moving, there's absolutely no one that actually understands what the orbit of the Earth is, right? But we simplify it and we say with certainty, I'm sure it's elliptical. Yeah, good for you, if you're just humble enough to realize that what you know is not true.
Yeah, another question?
All right, hi, my name is Jackson, and thank you so much for coming out today and talking about happiness. I think it's a very applicable topic in today's society, so thank you so much.
Very welcome.
My question, to give a little bit of context, so my younger brother is in high school, And he has recently, I've had a conversation with him in terms of what makes you happy, what makes you and other peers happy. And a lot of it relates to technology, whether it's playing digital games, video games online, Instagram, how many likes do you get on an Instagram photo, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, etc. So my brother, one of his friends committed suicide recently, back in October. And a lot of it had relation to how technology relates to happiness. So I guess my question, to give you that as context, my question is, what kind of advice do you give to an older brother and a parent for someone who's going through adolescence in their relationship with technology and happiness?
Good question.
Wow, that's a great question. So I need to answer it in 3 layers, as a matter of fact. So to start with, there is an issue with the definition of happiness. When you ask your brother what makes you happy, happiness we defined as the peace we have, the calm we get when we're okay with life as it is. That is never found in activities of pleasure. Just let me explain that quickly. So pleasure or fun are weapons of mass distraction, right? They basically are out there to stop your brain from solving the happiness equation long enough so that you can find your default setting as a child. If your brain is not solving the happiness equation, if it's not returning to you that something is wrong, you think that you're happy. But the reality is that the minute you go back to thinking, you're unhappy again, right? So that constant distraction is our attempt to not solve the problem. It's almost like taking a painkiller when you have a headache. There is a reason for the headache. By taking the painkiller, you're not solving the problem at all. You're just numbing the pain for a while. Once the effects of the painkiller wear out, you go back to your headache, right? So truly, what you want is to find out, when are you calm and peaceful? When are you content? When are you completely rested, relaxed, chill? When are you not striving to be in another place, right? This is truly what happiness is. Now, we have to realize that those young adults are going through the toughest time of all of us. It is so difficult out there. They have so many choices. None of them are right. They have so much pressure, right? And it's just not, none of the promises are being fulfilled at all. Are being fulfilled at all. They're being advertised too heavily. They're being swayed all over the world, all over life. And it's just really, really difficult. Now, what that means is that we actually should never take their answer on face value. And I will say that, by the way, to all of your friends, not only your younger brother, but everyone you know, especially in America. I beg you, if you ask someone, how are you doing, and they say, I'm fine, don't take it on face value. We need to start digging deeper.
No, really, how are you?
Yeah, it's like, so tell me a little bit about how last week was. Actually listen, tune in, care, right? As a matter of fact, I will even say, next time you tell yourself, I am fine, ask yourself, no, really, how are you, right? It's like, you know how when you start to catch the flu, you go like, this doesn't feel right, I need to do something about it. Somehow, when we start to catch unhappiness, we're like, okay, that's fine. I just need to go through another day. Now, that's number 2. Number 3, there is nothing wrong with technology or fun if we're already happy. So the challenge with technology, with distraction sometimes, with watching a comedy, with playing a video game, is if you're using it as a painkiller to mask the pain, right? If you're using it as a supplement when you're already happy, there's nothing wrong at all. Right? So what I've learned through my life, again through Ali, my son, and Aya, my daughter, who is an incredible sunshine herself, was that when your urge to engage in fun activities is coming out of need, then that's a very, very clear call to action. It's like, I'm trying to escape the problem here. I'm just popping pills to distract myself. If I've already discussed the problem with myself or with others, found my peace, and then went on to play a video game, when I'm totally peaceful, that's like a supplement. That's like you're taking your vitamins in the morning. When your brain is already calm, you're even giving yourself more reason to enjoy life. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The distinction between those two truly comes with two exercises, and I beg you to do this, everyone in the room. One is be the expert. Understand the truth about happiness. Understand the truth about unhappiness. Understand how you can generate those feelings on demand, and then be there for others. Be there for others fully, like really, truly connect. I work, believe it or not, if you asked me to boil my approach to life to one sentence, the one thing I know that solves every challenge I ever get is I treat others as I like to be treated. It's as simple as that. So if I am feeling down, how do I want to be treated? I want someone to hug me. I want someone to sit next to me, and when I tell them, no, I'm fine, I don't want them to leave me, right? I want them to sit next to me. I want them to connect with me at a human level, right? Please, 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 invest in your own happiness until the point you become an expert. And I will tell you, I swear to you, it's predictable. It's like an engineering problem. And when you get there, just make sure that you treat others like you want to be treated. Make them happy. It's the happiest thing you can ever do to yourself. Yes. Can I add another layer? So for parents, by the way, and whenever you become a parent, success as a parent is defined if I make my children successful. That's the wrong target, right? Every parent in this room should learn, or if you ever become a parent, learn that the target is a lot more sophisticated. The target is if I make my children successful and happy, right? If I make them only successful, I failed. If I make them only happy, I have failed. The target is I can make them both at the same time. It's ending those two, right? And again, when parents ask me, how do I make my children happy? I remind you that you can tell your children anything, they're never going to listen. The only way you can teach your children anything is to be that thing. If you lie to your children and say, don't lie, right? They will learn to lie, right? If you're a control freak, your children will grow up to be a control freak. The only way you can teach your children to be happy is to be happy yourself, to be the example of that happiness.
Okay, thank you so much for the discussion. It's been really inspiring. My question is, humans are inherently social beings, and as we see from all our ape species, we used to live in very small societies, and with Dunbar's number, the estimate that humans are in like 150 people as our social circle. With industrialization and being in a city like San Francisco, we know that it's really hard to find our tribe, and in some ways that grab for ego is our way to try to become that upper tier tribe, right? And so there's this longing for belonging that I think our society and the lack of connection has really kind of disintegrated. How do we balance the desire to belong in seeking out that happiness versus being an individual?
So one of the most interesting tricks, so by the way, nothing makes you happier than being with people that you love. People that are, challenging you, but interesting you, but caring for you. And, social connections are so important to our well-being, to our progress as a species, to our success and advancement. My simple trick is this: if you want to find people that love you and who you love, do the things you love, right? If you start to do the things you love, the people who are similar to you will show up at those places. So if you love tango, go dance tango. You'll probably find other tango dancers there. It's really not that complicated, right? Having said that, there is an interesting challenge between belonging and fitting in. Fitting in is an ego challenge. Okay? It is a challenge of me trying to make others approve of who I am, right? Belonging requires no approval. Belonging is, I feel home when I'm next to you, right? I feel at my best. I feel relaxed. I feel that I belong here. And by the way, I could be very different than you. And it doesn't have to be. We don't have to fit in together to belong. As a matter of fact, the best belonging is when you belong to someone who complements you, not someone who just agrees with you as you are, right? And by the way, no one will ever, I can just guarantee you that no one will ever approve of you. Ever, ever, right? If people approve of you, they're disapproving of themselves. That's the problem. So people fight for their own egos, and if you're perfect, then they're not. So no one will ever say you're perfect, okay? The problem is, you actually don't need anyone to tell you you're perfect. Because you know what? You're not. None of us are, right? As a matter of fact, the beauty of this artistic piece that we are is that it's not perfect. It's that it's so dynamic and flowing and changing and so, it's amazing that we actually think that the target is perfection. The target is to become the best gamer that you can become. That's it, right? And the best gamer that you can become is very different than the gamer I can become, and none of us is perfect, right? So I sum it up in two things. Find people who are wonderful, who you don't seek approval from, who love the things you love. And if you get there, hang on to them like your life depends on it, right? There is that interesting statistic of like, yeah, your social circle can extend to 150 people. I know thousands of people, thousands, right? Where I will meet them the next time, and sometimes I will have to consult with my contacts to remember their name, but I remember everything about them. You know how I remember everything about them? I pay attention, totally pay attention. Next time we meet, test me. I will remember the color of your hair and the question that you asked, right? And if that's what you want from others, give them that. Then you start to belong together. And I really, really believe that if you treat people as you like to be treated, more and more good people will come your way and treat you the way that you treat them. Yeah.
Hi, Mo. My name's Dana. Thank you so much for coming here tonight and for writing the book. My question is about, many of us have people in our lives or have experienced people who seem to thrive on unhappiness.
Yes.
And some of those people may even be related to us.
Yes.
So do you think, or do you think that there are some people who are unable to be happy?
These are two questions. So are some of us unable to be happy? Some of us have been programmed so badly to the point that it is extremely difficult, but everyone is reprogrammable. So I always compare happiness to fitness. Unless you're disabled, I mean, if you're fully able, your body is capable, you can become fit, right? Every one of us, if we eat healthy and work out 4 to 5 times a week, if we're able-bodied, we can become fit, right? For some of us, however, it is a lot more difficult than others, right? If your muscle mass is a lot less than where it should be, so the furnace in your body is not burning calories properly, so your metabolism is very low, or if you're in a carb cycle that you're unable to escape from, all of that makes it difficult for you, makes it more challenging for you. But does that mean it's not possible that you become fit? No. We've seen so many success stories of people who were way overweight and then became super fit. Similarly with happiness. So happiness there is an element of it that is logical. There is an element of it that could be spiritual, but there is an element to it that is physiological, right? Our bodies start to produce imbalances whether on the positive side or the negative side, by the way. So fun, for example, is addictive because fun, puts dopamine in your blood. Dopamine, by the way, is an excitatory, right? It excites you, and it's much more addictive than serotonin, but it actually removes the serotonin from your blood, which is the hormone that gets produced when you're calm and peaceful, which is when you're happy, right? On the other hand, if you're depressed, there is a very different chemical imbalance. And so that makes it so much more difficult for some people to get back to this. On the logical side, you can take cultures as a whole, German culture or Eastern European culture or Dutch culture or whatever, where we are trained in those cultures to be critical. We look for what's wrong with everything in those cultures. And so the happiness equation is by definition broken, because if you look for what's wrong, you're going to find it. And so no event is going to meet your expectation, right? And so there are other cultures, however, that are hyper-optimistic and easier to find happiness because they're looking for what's good about everything. And so events most frequently meet or miss or beat expectations. So first part of the question is, are some of us unable to find happiness? No, unless you're born with a different operating system, then you're probably going to be able to go through the same process to find happiness. For some of us who are, far down the path of unhappiness, it's a little more difficult. Now, let's come to the question of those who are our relatives, our parents, our brothers, our sisters, our boyfriends, our friends, who we feel obligated to, who are destroying our happiness. And I will answer with one simple thing that they tell you on aeroplanes: attend to yourself first before you help others, right? If you really want to help them become happy, you need to become super happy and resilient so that they cannot affect your happiness negatively, because if they affect your happiness negatively, you're never going to be able to help them. That's task number one. When you get there, I beg you to understand that what you owe people in your life is love, care, and respect. If they're your children, you also owe them support, right? Love, care, and respect does not mean you owe them your life, right? So I'm going to use the extreme example. If your mother is chronically focusing on everything that's wrong and always grumpy, right? You owe her love, care, and respect, right? Love, care, and respect means that everything you do with her is flooded with love, is caring and giving, and is respectful. So Ali was the master of this. He was amazing, my wonderful, wonderful boy. But his mother was not annoying at all. His mother was an incredible woman. I still believe she's amazing, right? Best mother, best woman, amazing. But she, as a mother, had so many emotions that would push Ali, to achieve something or something, whatever. So she would go to him and say, Ali, I want you to do this. And he would go like, why, mommy? Why do you want me to do this? And she would say, and he would go like, but mommy, I don't want to do this. And she said, but Ali, it's so important. I want you to do this, right? And after a few backs and forth, he would say something that completely blew me away every single time. He would hug her first and say, mommy, I'm not going to do it, but I love you, right? Every single time you could see her melt. It's like, okay, baby, you don't have to do it, right? Every single time. What he was giving her was not his life. He had his own life to take care of, including his happiness, but he always did that with love, care, and respect, right? Now, for those people in your life that you cannot take out of your life, give them that, but don't give them your happiness. If you give them your happiness, you're never going to help them and you're going to drown with them, right? And the game here is that you need to be as healthy as you can so that you can help them out.
That was a great answer. Thank you. So I want to refer to a couple of points you've made. One is about rain having no inherent value. The other is that happiness and suffering are these reciprocal cycles. And I guess the third is time. We can only perceive time if we're outside of it. So these are all reminding me of like a Zen Buddhist philosophy, which is, you know, wiping away all these illusions and trying to name things and understand them in order to just arrive at the truth, which is, you know, existence, or, you know, this sort of undefinable thing. So for you, 1 billion happy, or this future state where we all arrive at this truth, I mean, what does that look like? To me, it feels like it could be a moment of worldwide recognition, you know, together, stopping this kind of cyclical motion. What do you think?
So every spiritual belief, I mean, Buddhism always comes up, but every spiritual belief I've studied, so I've studied almost all of them to a very, very, to great depth. Every one of them is all about two things. One is alleviating suffering, right? And the other is truly about connecting with something bigger than you are, right? With something bigger than your physical form. And they all come at it from different ways, but one of my absolute most pleasurable studies, which I've done for years, was to actually find what's common across of all of them. And what's common across all of them is wonderful. They all reflect that so beautifully, to say, if you follow this physical form's abilities, you're probably going to miss a lot of the truth, right? And if you really want to perform in life in a way that is peaceful, safe, respectful to others, and happy, then you need to see behind the illusion. When you, however, imagine that this is doable, right? How does it look like? In every one of those beliefs, I think Sufism and Buddhism are actually quite similar in that approach. They call that, in Buddhism, they call it nirvana, Taoism, and so on. In Sufism, they call it dying before you die, right? Nirvana, actually, in definition, is to wake up and see, right? It's almost as if saying, this physical form we're navigating actually is the dream. That waking up from that dream, you start to realize that what is in the dream. If you haven't seen Inception, please see it with that in mind. Huh? We're living in Inception. We're living in that dream constantly. We're at level 4 of Inception, right? And to wake up and see, when I was answering the question about ego, is my ultimate dream. And my ultimate dream is to persevere in life with zero attachment to life. That is to find the truth. To find the truth, in my view, is to see that all of those illusions don't really matter. That what really matters is that I connect to you because you and I are part of that bigger thing that's outside the physical form. We're only separate in the physical form, if you want, right? If I can connect to you in truth, without judging you, without wanting you to be better or worse, without expecting anything from you, and I drop all of the rest of the illusion, if I have no willingness to buy a car and no aversion to buy a car, if I have no interest in a Pink Floyd t-shirt or hate to a Pink Floyd t-shirt, if I just flow and connect, then that is nirvana, right? When you get there, as the Sufis say, then you have died before you died. You're already there, right? And that, believe it or not, is when you hold the controller as a video gamer and you stop thinking. You're just in constant flow. Enemies show left and right, or blocks appear in Tetris, and you're just simply in constant flow with life. You don't think about where the block came from, why is it that block, I wanted a different block, why is that enemy shooting at me, is there a way for me to survive? You're just in constant flow, right? That is the beauty of life. That is truly, believe it or not, when you die before you die is when you start living. That's the only time when you start living, when you realize that it will always be okay, that you're already okay, and that because this is a zero-sum game, it starts with nothing and ends with nothing, and that all you have is that game, is now, is this game, right? And you flow, you play, and it becomes amazing. That's finding the truth.
Another question?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. I really appreciated your perspective on mixing science and spiritual and math. So I have two questions, and for context, I'm in a transition into my career as a senior manager, and at one point in time, I taught yoga. So my goal is to fuse my management style with the yoga philosophy, and working in corporate environments and working with companies where we're making billions of products and looking at billions of dollars in budgets. I guess one of my questions is, what advice do you have to work in that environment, but also fuse happiness into the environment in a daily, daily routine? And then the other one is kind of math related and spiritually related to Albert Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. So if you're looking at energy and mass and acceleration within the human body, I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Wow, how much time do we have? Yoga and all of the spiritual practices, by the way, is constantly trying to help you attune with the universe around you to find that balance so that the universe works for you, not against you, right? And truly, I'm not a yogi, okay? But I understand the value of that balance, whether you're a yogi or you're at the gym or you are, in the, lifting weights, or you're running a marathon, or you're at work, right? It's that very interesting. So let's just assume for a minute, as a hypothesis that we can then later prove with science, that the more you resist life, the more life resists you, right? Call it viscosity if you want. And start to work with that hypothesis. Most of the time, when we flow with life, life assists you. When you flow with business, business assists you. So one of the things I used to bring a lot to my teams, and I always had business teams who are doing massive deals, billions of dollars, was if the deal is so stuck and so resisting, have you ever considered dropping it? Just finding another deal that's easy and flowing, right? Why are you stuck on that idea of scarcity, that this is the only one, right? Can you actually flow with it? When it's stuck, can you ask yourself what is off balance? Is the relationship with the client off balance? Is my systems engineer off balance? What's going wrong? If you find that interesting balance, somehow life flows with you and helps you. And that you learn a lot in yoga. I mean, for those of you, I'm sure, this is California, so everyone here is a yogi, right? But you know the truth, huh? You would be in that pause, and it's so difficult. And then the good instructors would come to you and fix your ear a little. It's like, they just push it a little bit this way, and you go like, wow, I can do this for half an hour. So easy, right? And it really is so interesting when you think about it, that when life resists us, we somehow, because of all of the management books and business books we've read, we resist back. Good luck with that, right? Life is mighty. You cannot take it on. So this is one side. Mathematics and equations are actually really interesting. So E equals mc squared is not my favorite view of. I am a huge fan of the underlying concepts behind the theory of special relativity or general relativity. The whole idea of time and our total understanding of time, right? And truly, if you want to understand, for example, when I teach about mindfulness, big buzzword, everyone will tell you presence is important, you need to be mindful, you need to be present in the present moment, you need awareness, and so on and so forth. One of my favorite chapters in Solve for Happy is the chapter of time, and it truly starts with theory of relativity, right? Why is presence so important? Because if you truly understand space-time, you understand the slices of time that we have to go across along the arrow of time, and that the only access you ever have to any slice of time is the slice of now. This is pure science. This is Einstein at his best. And then suddenly you realize something amazing, that the only time you ever live is the slice of now, right? If you're ever thinking about the past and the future, you know what that is? You're inside your head. Because those are not slices of time that you have access to unless you convert them into thoughts and then roll them over and over in your head, right? To either torture yourself or pleasure yourself, but you're not living. Now, here's the interesting thing. So I actually run an experiment here, and I dare most of us, if you remove the time stamp, if you refuse to think about anything that has a past or present tense on it, you will completely fail to find an unhappy thought, other than thoughts of physical pain. So I feel cold can be in the present moment. Every other thought that makes you happy or unhappy is time-stamped with past and future, right? That's so interesting, but it is because the only life you ever lived is now. Everything else is a thought, and every thought can lead to unhappiness. Right? When you start to think about it this way, I use so many examples. I actually avoid math completely. I'm other than chapter 14, which is hyper-mathematical. The rest is just very simple, very complex scientific concepts explained very simply. And that applies to everything. You know, if you've read Nassim Taleb's Black Swan, for example, I use a lot of Black Swan to talk about the illusion of control, right? You know, and so on and so forth. And by the way, if you're a reader, please read, but if not all of us are readers, please watch the videos. I taught every concept of this book to Stanford, and it's online for free, available. It wasn't my best work, it was very early, but it still gives you every concept. Just promise me that you're going to put in that 1 hour a day, 3 to 4 times a week, just like going to the gym. And don't watch my content only. Watch Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle or all of those other masters that are teaching us so much. But just spend an hour a day until you know that you've completely grasped that topic of happiness and you're doing it well.
Thank you so much. One truth that I've internalized is in the form of a poster that I have in my home, and it says, we're not meant to be happy all of the time. And it's something that reminds me that when I'm going through a period of unhappiness, that it's temporary. But what you told me today, or what you said today, made me think that maybe we are meant to be happy all the time.
Absolutely. So no one is ever always happy, because basically that would shut down your survival mechanism, right? So pain, as much as we hate it, is good for you. Right? If you cut your finger without the feeling of pain, you wouldn't protect it, right? Pain is good for you. To cut your finger over and over, that's not right, right? So emotional pain is good for you. Emotional pain is something's wrong, I need to do something about it. Emotionally, it's not about physical pain. Unhappiness isn't. So there is a big difference between pain and suffering. Suffering is unhappiness, is pain on demand. It's recreating that pain over and over. Right? You're not supposed to be in that state at all. That state depletes you, it doesn't get you to do the right decisions, and it has no impact on the real world whatsoever. It doesn't change anything. What changes anything is that you stop being in that state and you start moving to a state where you can actually take action. This is when the world starts to change. Now, one of the biggest lies of the modern world is you're supposed to be unhappy, it's good for you. It makes you learn, it makes you change direction. What is good for you is pain. This is what makes you learn, and this is what makes you change direction, right? Ali dies. The pain is real. It makes me leave Google and dedicate the rest of my life to this, right? As harsh as it is, pain is good, right? If I close my door and cry every day, that's a waste of my life. That's the suffering taking over and wasting my life. It's not necessary. It doesn't lead you to any place good.
So do you think that when you're not happy, you're feeling pain? Is
So,
that
so here's my deal. So a lot of people say, Mo, are you always happy? No, I'm not. And I know people who are close to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is my happiness idol, and he's not always happy, right? As humans, the reality of this existence is that suffering is real, right? It's a survival mechanism, so it's going to be triggered every now and then. What I measure, surprisingly, is my rebound time. Such an interesting measure.
Yeah.
I measure my rebound time. Every time I feel unhappy, my number one measure is how quickly did I acknowledge it, just like acknowledging when I catch the flu, right? And then how quickly did I manage to go back to happiness. Now I'm daring you here. With the exception of 3 to 4 times a year, where it takes me a little longer, my rebound time is normally in seconds. Seconds from the time I'm aware that I'm unhappy to the time I actually completely dismiss that topic as not worthy of my unhappiness, right? I'll give you an example. Today in the morning, right, I was driving from San Francisco to Palo Alto to clear my storage, right? As I arrive in Palo Alto, I realize I forgot the key to the storage, right? An hour and 7 minutes after I left my hotel. I can sit there for the rest of the day cursing my life, right? Or I can simply smile, turn around, drive back, get the key, turn around, drive back, clear the storage, turn around, drive back, and come meet you, right? In a very interesting way, it was so simple for me to say, what if San Francisco was 4 hours away or 2 hours away instead of 1 hour away from Palo Alto? I would have been totally okay with it, right? It's just that I set my head at the beginning of the day that it's going to be an hour and 10 minutes. That is causing me the problem. And there's absolutely no problem. Hertz gave me a very nice car this time. So I was driving happily. It was enjoyable. I had a friend. We had a wonderful chat. Everything was okay, right? That is a mindset. It has nothing to do with what the world gave me. But truly, I measure, once that feeling of I'm upset that I forgot the key comes up, I acknowledge it and I tell myself, what good is that? It takes me seconds, most of the time, to return back to, let's just do something about it. Now, that is what the skill is all about. Does that mean I'm not going to feel unhappy tomorrow when I'm a little stressed going to the airport? I will. And it will take me a few more seconds to get it back to perspective. You're welcome.
All right, maybe one last question. If you really want, maybe we can squeeze you in too.
Hi, I'm Brad. Thanks for being here. Inspiring, challenging, etc. Let me give you a tiny bit of backstory. So I do a lot of research and work in the area of gender norms. And so your conversation focuses a lot on, at least what you said today, on the individual. So I'm wondering about your thoughts on like societal norms and entities and how like from birth, like, you know, like in gender norms, it's not the same, of course, with happiness, but they're similar. Like, you know, we're taught like girls should behave a certain way and boys should behave a certain way. And so we're sort of almost programmed from birth pretty much. So I'm curious about your thoughts on how societal norms and entities and schools and governmental organizations play into the whole, how can we as individuals be happy when we have these quote unquote higher powers that are sort of fighting against us?
It's incredible when you think about it that gender is an ego. Do you realize that? So I actually had that in Soul for Happy and my publisher wanted to take it out. But the reality is that identifying as a woman or a man, a boy or a girl is truly a form of ego, right? Because I will tell you, hands down, I am as much woman as I am a man, right? As a matter of fact, if I look at a leader like Gandhi, I think Gandhi was more a woman than a man, right? The problem we have is that we've started to define our femininity and masculinity in gender, in body parts, in genitals. It's really, really so shocking. Now, every single one of us has a bit of this and a bit of that. It's the ego conditioning that makes you embrace one more than the other. And it's so sad. As a matter of fact, I will call on every woman in this room and say that one of the biggest problems that our world has today is that you're still continuing with that ego conditioning. That it's amazing to me that there is so much beauty and value to our world in the feminine. right? The feminine attributes of empathy, of compassion is actually sometimes viewed as masculine because it involves action in it. But empathy, intuition, being able to connect, communication skills, all of those incredible feminine qualities that we learn not to embrace, not in our personal life, not in the workplace, not in our relationships, right? Because we're so conditioned to believe that they're wrong, that they're bad, that the irrationality, and I say that with love and respect, women have that incredible ability to be intuitive. They see so much more than a person who embraces the masculine, which is hyperlinear, can see, right? But then we call that irrational. It's not irrational. It is just a wider view of the same truth. And because we call it irrational, we give it a negative name, suddenly it becomes a boo-boo, and we don't want to show it, right? And believe it or not, one of the most incredible things that led to my success in my whole career is I constantly insisted to have a 50% share of feminine in my leadership. And I encouraged them totally to be women, to show up and sometimes be emotional and sometimes tell us what we're missing and sometimes connect to others and so on and so forth. So as I said, I'm writing several books at the same time, which I know sounds weird. One of my favorite pieces of work I'm doing now is on the whole problem of diversity, part of a book that's called Solve for Happy at Work. And that whole concept, I call it the CPC, the character profile chart. That whole concept of trying to tell you and tell everyone that each of us has a little bit of every attribute that every human has. And that, by the way, there is no two of us that are the same. There is no chart that says this is a woman and this is a man. There is a chart that says this is you, and another one that says this is you, and a third one that says this is you, and one that says this is me. And now the explosion of gender identity freedom is starting to make that so clear, right? And so if you actually follow those and start to tell yourself, I don't need to abide by anything, because there is no ego definition of who I really am, suddenly it all goes away. And suddenly you start to play to your strength. And suddenly you start to bring your strength to work. And that, I believe, is the first time where we will actually empower the feminine, not empower the woman's body view, right? Because what we're trying to do today is we're taking women to work and telling them behave like men so that you succeed. So while you have the body of a woman, we don't want the feminine attributes. We want you to be competitive, aggressive, forceful, linear, strategic, all of the masculine attributes. And by doing that, believe it or not, we're actually killing the feminine more. Now, is the feminine a gender attribute? Not at all. I know men who are more women than many of the women I know, right? And you can see now this is flourishing around the world. You can see men who are embracing that feminine energy in them. You can see women who are embracing the masculine energy in them. And you can see people in the middle who don't want to identify as either. And you can see people who are clearly men but are also feminine, and the other way around.
All right, let's do one last. You want to take the last thought? Go ahead. Go ahead and take the last thought. Oh, you had a question? Back there?
I'll get one more.
Okay.
So this has to do with pain, and it seems pretty easy these days to find something that's painful in the news. I've recently, kind of like disengaged with Facebook because it's like there's so many ways to sort of re-inflict that pain that I feel when I look out in the world and I see, all these terrible things that are happening, and I want to find a way to contribute and help them, but at the same time, it just costs me so much to stay engaged.
That's so brilliant that you're making this comment, yes.
And so I just, wanted to put it out there to you. It's like one of the things that I see is the use of resources. You mentioned we're not resource limited, and I see all these people that's like, we have the resources, why can't we just do these things, right? To
That's
to
such
solve the
a
problem?
great question. So here's the truth. Huh? The truth is, today's media, in whichever format, online, offline, TV, whatever, they have one target and one target only, which is to keep you stuck in front of them for as long as they can, because you're the product, right? If you follow, you're going to get stuck in two interesting ways. One is you're going to get frustrated like hell, and at the same time, you're going to be convinced that your frustration is worthy, that you're actually making a difference. You're making no difference whatsoever. So if you're for Trump or against Trump, right, the last 2 years of your life have contributed nothing to American politics whatsoever, right? You've just burned yourself from the inside out, and you've contributed no change whatsoever. Now, the reason for that is you and I can only champion one cause at a time. Because it is, so I am championing 1 billion happy. I am extremely passionate about clean water and anti-slavery, right? And I constantly get people that say, Mo, I want you to talk to me and work with me on this. And I say, I love you so much, and it's so important to me, and I want to support you 100%, but I can only do 1 billion happy now, right? The real question is this. You start from what it is that you are actually going to champion, and then shut everything else out. Everything. Everything else is a waste of your life. Total waste of your life. That's number one. Number two is, please tune into your emotions and start to acknowledge what happens. 11.5 years ago, I realized that my heart was becoming black enough to constantly see people in Hollywood movies pointing a gun at someone else's head and shooting. And my heart wouldn't move, right? I cried out loud that my heart became so numb. I refused to watch those movies anymore, right? I took charge of my own purity, my own engagement in life, and I said, my role in this is I'm never going to champion any of that again. If you do that too, and everyone starts to do that, Hollywood is going to produce comedies, right? So you need every one of us needs to do two things. One of them is to say, my number one mission in life is me. I need to clean this. I need to attend to myself first before I help others. That's number one. Anything that affects me negatively, anything that really takes away from that real me that I am, I'm going to take out one by one. And I guarantee you, if you take one a day out of your life, you have somewhere around 17 years to go, right? There are so many illusions in the modern world that you can take one a day for the next 17 years, and you will still have a few more to work on, right? Nothing wrong with that. It's just that we're so deluded by the modern world. Number two is, in terms of your impact on the world, champion one. See it through, and then champion another, right? Whatever that one is for you. It could be, animal rights. It could be, the right for gluten-free pasta for homeless people. Whatever it is that you feel is important, champion that one and shut everything else out, because you truly have no impact on anything else. Zero impact. They're lying to you by making you believe that you can change the world. You can only change the world in what you decide to champion. That's browsing. Now, because we're technical here, I use hyper-accurate tools to limit my engagement on things that are not good for me. So on my phone, I have things like Stay Focused or Rescue Time or other tools. I know the Pixels now have them, where I basically allow myself less than 12 minutes on Facebook every day, right? I have to be on Facebook because of my mission, right? I allow myself 12 minutes there every day. I allow myself somewhere around 44 to 42 minutes a day, depending on the day, on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a lot more effective in my view. Now, you may ask me why 42 and not 40. By the way, it's just being playful, right? And that idea of not taking myself too seriously. But those things are things that you actually have to start taking seriously. To tell yourself, CNN, nah, right? Fox, nah, right? And so on and so forth.
All right.
One last question.
One last question.
So, Mo, you know my story. I became much, much more positive because of my experience, and it took probably a decade. Because we have to unlearn so much in our lives, it requires a lot of practice for it to become a habit. Probably as a closing note, what would it take for people to implement this on a day-to-day basis for it to become a habit, for them to practice, in order for them to eventually inspire others to become like them and solve for happy? That's one. And given the fact that we have to unlearn so much, are we better off focusing on solve for happy at schools because the years to unlearn are much less than adults?
Beautiful question. So to start with, again, let's go back to the analogy of happiness and fitness, right? The first week at the gym is horrible. The second week is much worse. The third week, you want to kill yourself, right? And then it starts to get better, right? For some of us, it's our lower body that's very weak. For some of us, it's our chest and back, and so on and so forth. What I've realized from all of the people I've spoken to and the people that read the book is that most people will come. So what I follow here is a model that I call 675. So 18 concepts that you need to understand. Most people will come back to me and say, it was 1 or 2 concepts that were causing me 95% of my unhappiness. For me specifically, it was the illusion of control and the blind spot of labeling, right? These were my 2 biggest challenges that were causing most of my unhappiness, right? Once you define those, you focus on those 100%. 100% of your time is to fix those 2 or 1, right? When you fixed it, the rest becomes so easy. The problem is we try to fix all of them at the same time. When when people come to me on fitness, I say your number 1 target is to fix your carb cycle. If you fix your carb cycle, a lot more things come in place, right? For others, I will say your number 1 target is to fix your muscle mass, right? If you fix your muscle mass, a lot of other things will fall in place. So once you know that one thing, everything else at the gym becomes easy, right? So my ask of people is to actually browse for a while, take a week to a month to browse, to listen, to understand. And then when you find something that truly registers with you, note that as something you want to work on, and then go back and work on fixing this 90% of your time. Until it's fixed, everything else will follow. Are schools a better place to start? I will tell you hands down. So 1 billion happy is a directional target. I will tell you hands down, I will not stop unless I completely fail, right? Or until I actually get happiness to be part of our basic education. I find it ridiculous that we have to learn geography, but not learn happiness and well-being, right?
Yep.
So, but I will tell you hands down, I'm not qualified. I am not qualified. So I speak to teens onwards because teens are young adults, and it's way too much responsibility for me as someone who's not educated in child psychology and other things. So I'm seeking assistance from others who are good at this, right? It needs to be a joint project between me and others who understand. I mean, we were talking about K-12, others who understand what in this content and what language should we use to approach children. We will get there. My hope is that we will get there. But I cannot do this alone. I truly need some experts to guide me through so that I actually end up being a positive contributor, not an experimenter with such valuable lives that truly are our future.
I'm envisioning happiness as part of the educational curriculum, and that's making me really happy thinking about that. I think that we are all part of the 1 billion happy. I think we are going to continue sharing the message with other people, making it more of a part of our lives, our daily lives, the conversation. And Mo.
So remember the promise, tell 2 people who will tell 2 people who will tell 2 people, please?
Yes.
And please be kind enough to send a happy wish to Ali. He truly, truly deserves it. He was the kindest man I ever knew.
Love it, Mo. Thank you so much for joining us.